So October was a weird month. Welcome to Mad on Books, where I talk about fantasy mostly, science fiction sometimes, and comics occasionally. I say that October was a weird month. It was a weird month for me. It wasn't spooky at all, but I went from being unemployed or between jobs, where I had basically all the time in the world to do whatever the hell I wanted to do. And in the middle of October, I started a new job where I have to absorb a lot of information. So my mind hasn't really had the space for doing videos. I may be the only one who actually noticed. I don't know if anyone out there actually cares, but I kind of shot videos, released videos up until starting my job. And then I completely stopped because I was at work all day and I was spending a lot of time commuting. And then I'd come home at night and be kind of exhausted. But the cool thing about that is because I have a lot of commute, I have about 45 minutes one way on multiple trains. So I have about an hour and a half a day. And because I'm changing trains, I didn't want to use that time physically reading a book, because sometimes I can't sit down. I don't know if I'm going to get a seat. I have to jump out of a train, jump into another train. So I started listening to audiobooks. Audiobooks for me have been kind of a not really interested kind of thing. I tried some many, many years ago, and it just didn't click. Might have been the narrator, might have been my mood, might have been the story itself, don't know. But I always kind of thought, audiobooks aren't for me. And then this month, I started listening to them on my commute when I'm running around town doing things, and I really got into them. But first, let's get into what I read for Austober. If you've seen the video, I was planning on only reading Australian authors this month. And as far as reading with my eyes, that's exactly what I did. So what did I read? I read The Counselor by E.J. Beaton, which I loved. There's a review for it. Check out that review where I have a lot more to say about it, but I recommend it for sure. Then I read a book, actually, that E.J. Beaton recommended to me on Twitter, City of Lies by Sam Hawke. I'm sorry to say I DNNF'd it. DNNF is kind of a silly way of saying it, I guess. Did not finish. I kind of want to come back to this. I think it might have been I wasn't in the right mood, but I was not as excited as I would have liked to have been. I know a book is good when I wake up thinking about it, or I want to get home so I can sit down and read it. And I didn't have that feeling. And I got about halfway through, and I just wasn't as grabbed as I was hoping to be. I was more grabbed at the beginning, and less and less as it went on. So I may come back to this at some point. And then this chunky boy, The Shadow of What Was Lost, the first book in the Lycanius trilogy by James Islington, also an Aussie. This one was funny. I was gripped enough that I kept reading it all the way through, but there was a lot of setup. It feels like very much a setup book. And there were tons and tons of references to stuff that I didn't understand. Now, if you know me and you know that I'm a Malazan fan, you may be laughing right now, because that's what a lot of people say about Malazan. I still need to think about it a bit. I'll probably do a review of it where I can get into more detail. But overall, definitely a thumbs up. I want to keep going. I want to read the other two books in the trilogy. I mentioned that I started audiobooking. So what did I audiobook? This is the book that got me really into, or at least the audiobook of this really hooked me on audiobooking. The narrator, John Lees, has an excellent voice. This I really, really enjoyed. The author, Peter McLean, connected me with his publisher, and they actually sent me the books. So I will be reading, because I haven't got them all on audiobook, I will be visually reading the rest of the series. This one I audiobooked, and the audiobook is awesome. I really, really enjoyed this, and I'll definitely be continuing. Getting into audiobooks and realizing that I actually enjoyed them a lot, I listened to The Hobbit. I've read it multiple times before, but the audiobook with Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum, voices Gollum, and did the physical acting for Gollum in the movies, his voice is great. He does the voice acting great. The different characters are very clear, and it's very obvious who's speaking at what times. And it's just such a charming story. I really, really enjoyed it on audiobook. And last but not least, something that will probably not be familiar to most people who are watching this channel. This is not fantasy, it's not science fiction, and it's not a comic. I had a phase where I didn't really read fantasy, science fiction, or comics. I read lots of contemporary fiction. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Paul Auster, Haruki Murakami. And this was one of Paul Auster's books. I had a phase where at the time I read everything that Paul Auster had ever written and loved most of it. Some of his stuff gets a little too meta. This one, I may do a review. Let me know if you're even interested. On a fantasy sci-fi comics channel, I don't know if talking about a guy who writes about people in New York is at all interesting, but he's a master author. He does some really, really interesting stuff with characters, with structure. It's a story about telling stories in a way. And I was so happy to get into this. And the audiobook is narrated by the author himself in a very flat, monotone kind of New Yorker accent, which strangely enough suits his material quite well. So what videos did I do this month? The not very surprising most popular video this month was my video on the Lord of the Rings editions that I own. I think pretty much in the future I will put the words Lord of the Rings in every video title I do, no matter whether it's about Lord of the Rings or not. That one did better in a week or two than any video I've ever done. It's, I think, now the most popular video on the entire channel. I apologize to everyone that was expecting something about Rings of Power or about the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson movies or anything to do with Lord of the Rings. I wasn't even talking about the story. I was just talking about the books I own, but it proved to be very popular. I had an awesome chat with three awesome ladies, Joanna, Tori, and Jordan. I'll link all of their channels down below. We had a over 2-hour chat. My Friends on Books series, the second episode of Friends on Books, and I really, really enjoyed it. They were a hell of a lot of fun to talk to. I only published a couple of reviews. Malice by John Gwynne, which was actually something I read last month, and The Counselor, which I mentioned, and my TBRR, my reread list. I'm considering, the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm considering next year being the year of the reread. I am a little nervous about FOMO, fear of missing out on all of the new interesting books that everybody else is reading. But doing that TBRR video made it clear to me that there are a lot of books that I haven't reread in a long time that I'd really like to reread. I'm starting the year with the A Song of Ice and Fire reread, which is being hosted by Joanna. I just today agreed with Philip Chase that we are going to do a buddy read, probably also in January, of the Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe, which I've read, I think, twice now. I don't think he's read it at all. And I'm really, really glad we're doing it together. It's a very deep book. There's a lot going on, and having somebody that understands literature the way that he does will be very, very advantageous for my third read. Other than that, I watched all of The Rings of Power, which finished this month, and all of House of the Dragon, which also finished this month. It doesn't really have to be one against the other, of course, but just me personally, I liked House of the Dragon a lot more. I enjoyed Rings of Power, but it was bumpy. Let's put it that way. But House of the Dragon was consistently all the way through just pretty damn awesome. I loved it. I have Fire and Blood, the book that it's based on my physical TBR shelf. I will probably work that in somewhere this month or next month in preparation for the Song of Ice and Fire reread in January. But I also really enjoyed, and I'll link to the channel, I really enjoyed Mike's book reviews, doing a chat with two others, Scott the Bald Booktuber and Madeline. I don't know her very well, sorry. I'll link to all of their channels down below. The three of them talking about each episode as they all came out. I will be rewatching all of House of the Dragon probably this month so that I can then cancel the streaming service that I only got for House of the Dragon. It's not coming out, the second season's not coming out for 2 years, so I don't need to have that anymore. Other than that, how is the channel performing? I assume that because I haven't really put out a video in 2 or 3 weeks, that probably makes the whole algorithm crash and everything is much worse than it used to be. But I just today hit 400 subscribers, which is a cool milestone. I'm happy about that. But I'm working on getting my work-life balance sorted after 2 months of doing whatever the hell I want all day long. So my videos will probably be a little slower for a while. I'm aiming at maybe 2 a week to start with, and hopefully I can keep that up. How was your month? What did you read in October? Was it a spooky month for you? Was it a weird month for you like it was for me? Whatever you did, I hope that you're doing well, and as always, keep reading awesome books.